Welcome to another Power Packed episode of Purpose Today. I'm your host, Dr. April Dobson, and I'm very excited for a very special episode today. We're going to talk about 5 mistakes that leaders make, causing them to lose top talent in a competitive market. This is an episode that continues in our Leading with Purpose series, and you don't want to miss this episode. We're actually going to unpack what will help you as a leader to ensure that you can attract and retain top talent in a competitive market. Now, I want to just briefly give you an insight on these, and we're going to unpack each one of these in today's episode. But if you're a leader who is not ensuring that you're meeting your employees' evolving expectations, and that includes candidates, then you're making a grave mistake. If you are also failing to ensure that you have employee engagement and career growth available for employees and new hires, if you're failing to ensure that your compensation is competitive and the benefits that you have are desirable for your employees and employees who you desire to have in the organization, if you're failing to ensure that you are appropriately branding your organization to show that you are actually an employer of choice. And if you are failing to do the number one thing that most employers are doing, and I know I have this listed as number 5, but it's the number one thing, they are failing to ensure that there is an alignment of purpose and mission. So there's often a misalignment of purpose and mission. And these 5 things combined are causing organizational leaders to miss out on attracting and retaining top talent in competitive markets. So you don't want to go anywhere for this power-packed episode. We'll be right back after these brief sponsor messages. This episode of Purpose Today is brought to you in part by the Purpose Professionals community. The Purpose Professionals community has relocated from school to its new platform, and the Purpose Professionals community exists to ensure that professionals are able to pivot to align their profession with their purpose, to ensure that they can grow their career, and they can ensure that they can network with like-minded professionals. And as an entrepreneur, they can align their business with their purpose. If you want to connect with the Purpose Professionals community, then click the link that is in the chat. This episode is also brought to you in part by Purpose Today Global, an organization that exists to help organizations to align their workforce development, succession planning, and talent management strategies for optimal outcomes and help professionals to align their profession with their purpose. If you are interested in contacting Purpose Today, the email is in the chat, or you can click the link. Welcome back to this episode of Purpose Today. We're going to talk about the 5 mistakes that leaders make that are causing them to lose top talent in a competitive market. So one of the things that leaders are making the mistake with is they're not staying in tune and they're not addressing the key emerging expectations from the personnel within their organization. Now, of course, for individuals in an organization, their needs are ever evolving, their expectations are ever evolving, but you can always find out from personnel by having a variety of approaches. You can have one-on-one sessions with your staff. You can have town halls. You can have round robins. There's so many different things that you can do to receive input and insight from personnel on what their expectations are. But when you fail to meet the evolving expectations of personnel within your organization, then you're often going to lose top talent. You can also gain insight from staff by conducting periodic surveys. You can do surveys that are conducted once a year. You can do surveys that are conducted each quarter. You can target surveys based on different areas that are important for your organization. But the key is ensuring that you have different types of mechanisms in place that you can receive feedback from staff so that you can properly manage those expectations. You can find out clearly what it is that they desire, and you can do what is necessary to accommodate reasonably those expectations. So often employees want to ensure that they have a good work-life balance. Many of them want to ensure that they have the environment that they need for collaboration, and some of them want to ensure that they're able to either work remotely or work in a hybrid situation. And there's also concerns regarding how their voice is heard and inclusion so that they can be able to share insight on ideas that they have. So there's so many things as it relates to expectations, even awards, how you can recognize and award staff. So you want to be mindful of what the expectations are and how those expectations are evolving so that you can retain top talent and even attract top talent, because often how your existing personnel view your organization, how it views leaders, they are going to share that insight. It's going to be reflective in surveys, and that's going to either encourage or discourage top talent from coming to your organization. So that's going to have an impact on attracting talent as well. Now, the second thing that we're going to talk about is career growth and employee engagement. And you want to ensure that your organization and that your leadership, not just you, but that you're working on mechanisms to engage employees at various levels. Now, I believe that every person has leadership on the inside of them, regardless of whether or not they're in a formal leadership role. But you want to ensure that you are creating mechanisms for engagement, and you're also creating mechanisms for career growth. Now, you should be thinking about what are the opportunities for growth, both formally and informally in your organization. You want to think about how you're developing your talent pipeline, how you're developing leaders, what your succession plans are, and that you're ensuring that you have a structure within your organization to be able to allow people to grow. Now, I've said before, and a lot of people will say, employees don't leave organizations, they leave bad leaders or bad managers. And I don't believe that that's necessarily always true. I think that can be true at times, but I do believe that personnel leave when a position no longer serves them. So if you want to enhance the opportunities for top talent to stay within your organization, then you want to ensure that there are opportunities for career growth and engagement. And so for career growth, that may mean that you create development programs. That may mean that you ensure that every employee has an individual development plan to ensure that they can properly develop both formally and informally. You want to ensure that there are mentorship opportunities, there are coaching opportunities within the organization. All of these things are important. And I think you want to ensure that you diversify the growth opportunities as it relates to advancement and as it relates to training and development. All of these things are very important. Now, I want to talk next about looking at your competitive compensation and benefits. Now, this is something that is going to impact your ability to both attract and retain top talent. Now, I know there are often times that leaders will say, this is what is needed, these are the skills that are needed. But you want to ensure that when you're thinking about roles that you want to fill, that you're looking at the bigger picture. You're looking at the organization. You're looking at the structure of the organization. You're considering the mission, and you're considering what is needed now and what is needed in the future state. And you want to plan out 5 to 10 years in advance of how your organization is growing, how it's changing, how it's developing. What do you see adjusting over the next decade? Sometimes organizational leaders look at 1 to 2 to 3 years, and that's really not an adequate time frame when you're thinking about the structure, the positions, how you're going to handle succession planning and recruitment. All of those things are important because that's going to help when you're thinking about the compensation and benefits. And so the cost of having to recruit, the cost of having to replace talent is significant. And so you want to ensure that you're reducing your turnover and that you're enhancing your retention rates, and you're, like we said before, with growth, you're creating avenues for growth within the organization so that you can retain top talent. And so you want to think about compensation and benefits in terms of what do personnel, your ideal personnel, what would they need? What do they desire? What are other organizations doing? Even if they're not in your same industry, there's so much that can be done for people to transition between industries with transferable skills. So you want to think about the bigger picture as it relates to compensation and benefits. And you want to have various options as it relates to compensation and benefits for staff. That is important because the needs of personnel might change based on different phases of their life, different things that they may be experiencing. I can say that as an empty nester and as someone who has had an opportunity to serve in the military as a veteran, there are certain things that may not be a necessity for me. So you want to think about, what is ideal for the various people and the types of people within your workforce. You may have baby boomers who have different needs than, people who are Generation Z. There's different needs. So some employees may value benefits packages more as it relates to healthcare insurance. Some may value more flexibility in terms of paid vacation and time off. And some may value the workplace flexibilities like hybrid work, remote work, telework, and some, may value having the flexibility to adjust their work schedule, the flexible work schedules. So you want to make sure that you're looking at your total rewards for your organization and for, people in your organization and for your anticipated growth. All of this is important. Now, I want to say this. There are some companies that focus on hiring employees. Some have a mixture of contractors and employees. And so you want to look at different options and look at the needs. And you should survey your personnel on at least an annual basis to find out the needs. And I would encourage you to consider surveying prior candidates to find out what their expectations and their needs are in the way of compensation and benefits. And if you know that you're not able to offer the higher end of the pay scale as it relates to salary, then you want to make sure that that is offset with other benefits. Can you give additional paid time off? Can you allow more flexible options that would attract and retain top talent? Now, the next one that we're going to talk about is your branding. And so oftentimes, organizations don't really highlight what makes them an employer of choice. Different candidates have different preferences as it relates to what they're looking for. And I can say that in the private sector and in the public sector, there are different benefits and drawbacks for individuals. I can say that the federal government historically was considered to be very stable and secure, and that is not necessarily the case. There are some people who are choosing to leave the federal government because they don't consider it to be secure. Now, I want to share that the mission of an organization is very important. There are more and more people today who are looking at what they value. They're looking at their purpose, and we're going to get into this on the next one. But they're looking at what an organization has as its mission, as its focus, as its vision, as its values, and what is the organization doing to create an impact, either in the community, globally, or whatever the case may be. And so more and more people are looking at what they value. They're looking at what they're passionate about. They're looking at what their purpose to do, especially when you look at people who are over 40. And I'm not singling out any particular group, but what I am saying is that studies show that most people don't identify their purpose until they're beyond the age of 40. Now, I want to say that people of all age groups are definitely considering what they're passionate about. They're considering their purpose, but there's a higher concentration from a statistical standpoint of people who are over 40 who are wanting to ensure that they are aligned with their purpose, that they're aligned with what they're passionate about, and that they're aligned with what they value. Now, I can also encourage leaders that if you haven't begun to think about what it is that sets you apart, what it is that makes you an employer of choice, you might be missing out on attracting the right candidates. Now, this particular mistake is something that is more impactful as it relates to attracting candidates. In terms of retaining candidates, you want to be able to clearly articulate and clearly demonstrate how the organization has been meeting its mission, how the organization has been making an impact, and these things are very important. Employees want to see how their work is making a difference, and they want to be able to correlate it to the organization. And so it's very important that if you want to attract the right clients, that you're showing evidence of your mission and your values and how those are being executed, and you're showing what makes you an employer of choice. If you want to retain top talent already in your organization, you want to be able to really show how the organization has made an impact. And if you can publish that in annual reports, if you can periodically give that information to staff in meetings, maybe in your town halls, but you should periodically be talking about the wins that your organization has had, and you should also be hearing and receiving the wins from personnel within your organization. Staff want to be recognized. They want to be rewarded in the ways that are meaningful to them. And for some people, just knowing how they've made a difference is adequate. So you want to make sure that you are appropriately branding the organization, and even within the organization, different departments, different divisions, different branches, whatever the case may be pertaining to your organizational structure. I also believe and know that it's important for you to be able to show those wins on social media. Are you displaying that on LinkedIn? Does your company have a YouTube that you're highlighting the things that you've done and the ways that you're making an impact? You should be showing what you're doing that is making a difference. That is vital. Now, our fifth one, and this is something that, I especially love to talk about, as someone who is an expert with human resources and with talent management. I know that many organizations are not ensuring that there is an alignment with mission and purpose. And there is a misalignment in many organizations because oftentimes the approaches that leaders use in recruitment and in internal placements and in reassignments and all of this, usually it does not relate to purpose and passion and, value. Oftentimes, organizational leaders are looking at experience, they're looking at skills, but they're not asking the questions about what is meaningful as it relates to purpose and passion and values. And so you want to ensure that when you are interviewing candidates, that you are taking the time to incorporate questions as you're planning your interviews, that you're incorporating questions that really allow you to have insight on what those candidates value and, have some insight regarding their purpose and their passion. You definitely want to ensure that there is an alignment. And when you're talking about top talent that you have already in the organization, you want to ensure that you are finding out from individuals, what are they passionate about? What kind of work do they love? I do encourage you to go back. There is a video from a prior episode that I released with questions that leaders should be asking. And with that, you can find out a lot of valuable information on what is important to the leaders within your organization. Like I said, within every person, there is a leader, regardless of whether or not they're in a formal leadership role or not. And when you ask those appropriate questions, what kind of work do they love doing? What kind of projects do they enjoy? What can you do to make their job more enjoyable? These types of questions help you to have insight on what they value, on what their purpose is, what they're passionate about. And you can clearly ask them, do they know, what their purpose is? What are they passionate about? And you can, when you're asking all of these questions, it can help you that when there are opportunities, and I said this in a prior video, if there are opportunities that surface for special projects or, for things that come up as it relates to growth opportunities for exposure, you know who has an interest, so that when you are announcing these opportunities and you're giving people an opportunity to volunteer or to apply, if it is a formal role, you should be announcing it, not selecting someone without an opportunity to announce it within the organization. But if it is, a project that is coming up, you want to give that opportunity for staff to volunteer for that opportunity, but you also can have insight that these are the people who have expressed that they have an interest in. And I'll just use as an example, maybe someone has an interest in, assisting with the communication strategy for a policy that your organization is releasing. Maybe someone has an interest in creating a new dashboard that allows you to do data analytics. There's a variety of things that could be opportunities within the organization, and you have to ask the right questions to ensure that you have the insight that you need, so that you are being intentional and purposeful with ensuring that leaders within your organization are having an alignment, so that you're not having a misalignment with the mission and with the purpose of the leaders within your organization. Now, I want to also say this. It is important to ensure that you are looking at the mission of the organization and what the desired outcomes are and what you want to achieve and the strategic goals. But you also want to be intentional that when you're handling the planning processes for talent management, for workforce development, for succession planning, that you're looking at purpose of personnel as well. And so every consideration that you have when you begin to integrate this and you begin to marry these in your assessments, it will help to ensure that you retain top talent, because people are doing what they love. They're doing what they're passionate about. And when you introduce those opportunities for growth and for development, you can retain top talent and you can continue to attract top talent. If you're able to promote internally, that is going to help your organization, and it's going to also allow candidates who are looking at your organization and are interested in assuming opportunities and applying for opportunities in your organization, that they know that you value people and you value the leaders within your organization, and you're giving them opportunities for growth. Now, I know that I've uncovered quite a few things today, and I want to ensure that you're equipped to have success as a leader. You don't want to continue to make these mistakes. Please put in the chat what has stood out for you. Please put in the chat what you can implement today. And if there's any questions that you have, and I did not have an opportunity to get to those, I will do my best to answer those in the comments, but you can always send an email, connect with me on LinkedIn, on YouTube. If you haven't hit the subscribe button, hit the subscribe button. Now, if you are a leader and what you've heard has been valuable to you and you haven't subscribed, I encourage you to hit the subscribe button. And if it's been valuable and you're already subscribed, share this link with another leader who you believe can benefit from this. And if you think you've heard something today and it's having you say, Dr. April, I have been making these 5 mistakes that leaders are making that are causing them to lose top talent, and I have lost top talent. I have had professionals in my organization, great leaders in my organization, who knew that I was a great leader. They knew that I valued them, but they left. They took another opportunity, either in another department or in another organization. And I believe that the reason that they took that other opportunity is because I was making these mistakes that you just mentioned. And I want to change my strategy. I want to change my approach. I want to have a discussion with you so that we can talk about strategies for my organization. If that is you, there's a link in the chat that will allow you to book a consultation call. Now, there is an investment for that consultation call because I'm giving you specific strategy that you can use for your organization. So this is value that is coming back to you to help you to really adjust the areas that you need to adjust within your organization. Go ahead and click that link to book your strategy consultation. And if you desire to enter into a longer term contract, then that consultation investment will go towards that contract to help your organization to ensure that you're postured to be able to attract and retain top talent in a competitive market. Now, I really appreciate you watching on today. Now, I am so grateful for all of you who are watching and all of the engagement that you've had. Thank you so much for listening in today and engaging and asking your questions. I am excited that we have an opportunity to partner together so that I can help you position your organization for lasting success. Now, one final thing that I want to say to those of you who are watching. I'm going to continue in this series that will help you lead with purpose and avoid making mistakes that leaders are making. And so I have several different areas that I plan to cover. But if there is an area that is related to HR in any way that would be of value to you, I ask that you drop it in the chat and I will do my best to incorporate that into future episodes. Thank you so much for tuning in today for this power-packed episode of Purpose today in the Leading with Purpose series. And I'm excited about a new episode that is going to air on next week. And I want you to tune in because there's a lot of value that we have that will really help you be able to introduce some AI solutions while keeping a human-centered approach. You don't want to miss it, so go ahead, make plans to view it next week. I'm super excited. Thank you so much for tuning in. Have a wonderful, purpose-filled weekend.